Hello everyone, it's Bill here doing another video. I'm trying something different. I spend way too much time cutting and pasting on the video editor, so I'm just gonna do a raw video. I'm also choosing to use my phone this time. Seems to be working pretty well. It's got a built-in light. It's just a basic Nokia. I'm not quite sure. I think it's a 630 or something. The motherboard we're reviewing today is the Aopen AX59Pro. It's another super socket motherboard. It comes in the ATX form factor and compatible with all the standard Intel, AMD, Cyrix, IBM chips, but also supports the IDT Win chip, which I actually never used. So if you've got any experience with them, drop me a line in the comments. In terms of BIOS, we can look at the BIOS chip here. It's socketed. That means you can actually use it for some hot flashing if you flash the wrong BIOS version in the motherboard. It's always nice and fun and has saved my day quite a few times. In terms of memory, 2 SIM slots and 3 SD-RAM slots. According to the manual, supports up to 1 GB of RAM. Haven't quite managed to get that much. I tried a 256 MB stick and it only read 128, so not quite sure what's going on there. In terms of cache, there are apparently 2 versions of this motherboard. One with 512K and one with 1 MB, and by the looks of this, it seems I've got the 1 MB cache version. Not a big deal if you're using one of these mobile AMD K6 Plus or K6 Plus processors, because they've got onboard cache, which means the level 2 motherboard cache becomes level 3 motherboard cache. Okay, what else have we got? Yes, BIOS version. The latest version I've found is version 2.36, and that enables all sorts of features, specifically the mobile processor support for AMD. Let's have a look at the slots. We've got 1 AGP slot, 4 PCI slots, and 2 ISA slots. Storage, there are 2 IDE channels, primary and a secondary, and they support UDMA standard 33. Now, there's a floppy connector here and it's really at the worst position. Now, Aopen does this on a lot of motherboards. For some reason, they put the floppy port really in awkward position, so you need a very long floppy cable. A lot of people probably chose not to use a floppy at all. It's got 2 fan headers, one here, and there's another one down there. The usual front headers can be found over here. Okay, let's have a look at jumpers. And setting, there's some dip switches over here. This allows you to configure, not quite sure what. We'll have a look at the table in a second. And there are also some jumpers. There's some jumpers here. And there should be another batch of jumpers right up here. Okay, so let's have a look what this motherboard supports. So let's have a look at voltages first. Make sure it's focused. So voltage support is pretty good, going all the way from 1.8 volts up to 3.52. In terms of multiplier ratio, all the standard stuff from 1.5 to 5.2. Doesn't seem to support 6.0 though. Okay, and there's another table over here for clock speed. So compared to the Gigabyte GA5AX motherboard, not quite as overclocker friendly, so you can only get up to 112 MHz on the frontside bus, but most of us will either use the 66 or the 100 MHz frontside bus settings. And there's another table over here. This just allows you to set the memory clock to either synchronize with the processor or with the AGP. I believe this makes sense if you're using a 100 MHz frontside bus processor, but your memory is only PC66, and then you can sync it to the AGP interface. And I believe that's all we need to cover. We're just going to have a look at the standard stuff. 2 PS2 ports for the mouse and the keyboard. It's got 2 USB ports, 2 serial ports, and there's also a parallel port. What else is interesting? It's using Sanyo capacitors, so Japanese stuff. So Aopen usually goes with some good capacitors. And that's really it in terms of specifications.
Okay, so let's have a look at the hardware and software I'm using to benchmark these motherboards. For socket 7 hardware, I'm using a Pentium MMX233 with 64 MB of PC100 SD RAM, a PCI S3 Trio 64B Plus graphics card, and also a PCI 3DFX Voodoo 2 graphics card with 12 MB of RAM. For the Super Socket 7 comparisons, I'm using a little bit more substantial hardware. We've got a K62 Plus with 550 MHz, 128 MB of PC133 SD RAM, and a AGB 3DFX Voodoo 3 3500. In terms of benchmarking, we have a wide range of DOS and Windows benchmarks. Superscape, we've got the PC Player benchmark, Doom shareware, Quake shareware. On the processing side, we're running SuperPi, but also Quake 2 in software mode. And just to check some gaming performance, we're using Unreal in Glide mode and Forsaken in DirectX mode, running at a fairly low resolution of 512 by 384, and therefore just finding if there are any weaknesses in the system. Okay, so let's have a look at some benchmark results. First, we're going to have a look at the storage performance on the IDE controller. And just like on the Gigabyte motherboard, I was unable to enable DMA mode. I tried ticking the box and the computer would just freeze and would not post anymore. So all I have is a result with DMA not working. Okay, and here we go to the Socket 7 results. So this is with the PCI graphics card, the Pentium MMX233, and a PCI Voodoo 2. So I'm using conditional formatting now to highlight the colors. Just makes it easier to see who's on top and who's average and who's behind. Straight away we can see a lot of red colors for the Aopen motherboard. In DOS particular, it's the weakest board really. Just in Doom the Gigabyte is a little bit slower, and the gap is quite significant. So if you want to do something in DOS, that might not be the fastest motherboard. Now looking at the Windows benchmarks, there's only a red one with the Quake 2 in software mode. The other ones are yellow, and the Gigabyte is slower here. So if you're looking for a motherboard to do something under Windows, then the Aopen is a little bit faster than the Gigabyte motherboard. The individual numbers, I'm not going to read them out. You can just pause the video and study them yourself. And here we have the Super Socket 7 benchmark. So we're comparing the Aopen with the Gigabyte because these are the only two motherboards I have reviewed so far. What stands out is the SuperPi. Now, I was not able to have the motherboard complete the SuperPi benchmark. It crashed with various error messages to do with rounding and square root errors. Not sure why. It completes all the other benchmarks, and I even tried reinstalling the benchmark or running it off the USB. I have no idea what went wrong, but I could not complete the benchmark. So basically look at these results. If you using it under Windows, then the Aopen motherboard is clearly faster, quite by a large gap. If you look at the 4-second difference between 161 and 202, that is quite a gap. Same goes for Unreal, and even in Quake 2 in software mode, the Aopen motherboard is a lot faster. In MS-DOS, it's mixed. In the Superscape benchmark, the Gigabyte is faster. In the PC Player bench, the Aopen is faster. In Doom again, the Gigabyte is faster, and in Quake, the Aopen is faster. So there you have it. Under DOS, bit of a mix, depends on what you run. Under Windows, the Aopen is clearly a very fast motherboard. And that's really it for this video. If you want to find the downloads and the information about this motherboard, you can go to my website at philscomputerlab.com. Any comments, any queries, just leave them with the YouTube channel, and I'll try to come back to you.